Hurricane warnings are out for the east coast of Florida as Tropical Storm Nicole strengthens and heads for landfall. Good morning, I'm Mike Naso with this special video update coverage of Nicole. Looking at the satellite of the Atlantic, it looks a lot more tropical than it did this time yesterday. It's starting to consolidate around the center, and the winds are getting closer to the center rather than further away. So it has gone from a subtropical storm to a tropical storm. Here is the latest as of 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from the National Hurricane Center. Nicole was at 27.8 north, 72.7 west. Winds up to 50 miles per hour, so it's a mid-range tropical storm, and the pressure is now dropping close to 992, 994, so it is stronger than yesterday, and it is strengthening, moving west very slowly at 9. Now, yesterday when I spoke to you, it was moving northwest following that weakening upper-level low. We have now seen the turn towards the west underneath this dominant ridge of high pressure, and that's going to keep it steering towards the west-southwest and then the west-northwest into landfall in Florida. Now, we do have watches and warnings out. We have hurricane warnings for the Abacos, the Berry Islands, Bimini, and Grand Bahama Island in the northwestern Bahamas, and we now have a hurricane warning from Boca Raton, Florida, to the Flagler-Volusia County line, as well as a hurricane watch down from Hollandale Beach to Boca Raton, Florida, including Lake Okeechobee, and from Flagler-Volusia County all the way to Ponte Vedra Beach. So, what this means is that hurricane conditions should be expected in those areas, and then further north and on the other side of Florida on the west coast, you guys are preparing for tropical storm force conditions, and we have a tropical storm warning, not just for Andros and New Providence and Eleuthera in the Bahamas, but from Hollandale to Boca Raton, and then from the Flagler-Volusia County line to the Altamaha Sound in Georgia, including Lake Okeechobee. That's a tropical storm warning, tropical storm watch on the west coast of Florida. All of this is because of this wind field. Look at the size of Nicole. Nicole has a huge wind field. Now, these aren't 200-mile-an-hour winds or anything, come on. But these are tropical storm winds that can take down trees, take down power lines, and that's going to strengthen even further into a hurricane, and those winds will be a smaller amount than the tropical storm force, but still, having all of this slam into the coastline is going to be a very serious weather event later on this week. Here's a beautiful visible satellite imagery, and I showed this to show the proximity to Florida, the Florida coastline right in here, the Grand Bahama Island right here, Abaco Island right here, and again, the center of Nicole bubbling up right in here. Thunderstorms are bubbling over it. It's still dealing with a little bit of wind shear, a little bit of organization left to go, but it is on the right track to becoming a hurricane before landfall. Again, that motion seems to be straight west, maybe even west-southwest, and that is because of the high-pressure ridging we were talking about. Now, here's the spaghetti model plots, and they're in pretty good agreement of either a very close shave or a landfall right near Abaco Island, and then eventually coming ashore somewhere north of West Palm Beach. Right now, the Hurricane Center's official track, and again, it could be anywhere in that cone, but right now, the center of the center might cross somewhere around Sebastian, Hutchinson Island. So if you're in Stewart, Jupiter, Cape Canaveral, Vero Beach, further north than usual, you guys may have the direct impact of landfall. Here's the GFS model, and I wanted to show this. This is as of 6Z. Watch what happens with this trough here over areas there of the northwestern U.S. as it moves on into the United States. It picks up our Nicole and jettisons Nicole off the eastern seaboard there. So this is going to be a fast event. Thankfully, hopefully it doesn't prolong the rain. But right there, it strengthens it to about 980 millibars. So that is a Category 1 hurricane, maybe even a high-end Category 1, as that high pressure is there built to the north of it. Watch as the high pressure weakens and the system goes into the Big Bend of Florida and then right on up. So moisture and nasty weather for the East Coast is not out of the question, as Nicole will eventually turn and head towards the east. This is the European model, and this is as of 6Z, and you can see it makes landfall. Now, there is a discrepancy between the GFS and Euro, which are a little further south, and the HWRF and the HMON models, the hurricane models, that are further north. This is the HWRF model, which has it moving just skirting areas there of Abaco Island and making landfall further north than the Hurricane Center is saying, From that map, that landfall is kind of fast, but it looks almost closer to Cape Canaveral. So that would be an area there getting into the northern eye wall of a hurricane. The HMON hurricane model, not as intense, very broad, but brings it in north of Cape Canaveral. So like the Hurricane Center said, we're going to see if the GFS and Euro are right with a more southern track, or if the hurricane models are right with a more northern track. Either way, from West Palm to Fernandina Beach, you guys need to overlook your hurricane plans. Now, the weather pattern setup, as I mentioned, we're going to have this troughiness move through the United States, and right now we have the ridge of high pressure built in, and that's steering Nicole towards the west and even the west-southwest. In fact, if you look at that water vapor, you can see the direction of the clouds. That's the direction that the upper-level winds want to take it, which is actually in this direction, if you watch that carefully. So it looks like the system will bend west-southwest before eventually rounding the periphery of the ridge and having that ridge break down in part due to the troughiness moving through. Remember, it's later in the year, so we're going to get cold air blasts and snowy weather up there in Wyoming. You guys are going to get it, especially in the higher elevations, and that will all play a role in kicking Nicole out. But where exactly that turn happens, does it happen right at the coast? Does it happen a little inland? Does it happen in the Gulf? Just not sure yet, so that's why everybody needs to watch it very carefully. The storm surge is going to be a problem, as I mentioned yesterday, when you have clockwise high pressure moving that direction, and then you have the counterclockwise storm moving that direction. That just piles coastal beach erosion. But the onshore winds of the storm as it makes landfall are going to cause storm surge. Look at this, 2 to 4 feet from Hollandale Beach all the way to North Palm Beach, 3 to 5 from Palm Beach to Altamaha Sound in Georgia, and even up here towards Savannah River, 2 to 4 feet, mouth of the St. Johns River, 3 to 5 feet. We saw what water can do. We saw it down here in southwest Florida with Hurricane Ian back in September, and now Nicole is going to push a lot of water on the East Coast. Now, this is a little graphic from the Hurricane Center, and I wanted to show this because it shows the possible water rise greater than 3 feet, maybe up towards 6 feet, all along the coastline there, even into South Carolina. Don't think that you guys are not going to have flooding and water rise. Remember how big the wind field is. This wind field is so large that it's going to have an onshore fetch well to the north of where the center makes landfall. So even if it made landfall at Kennedy down here, you're going to have a fetch of water pushing onshore throughout the Georgia and South Carolina coastline. Now, it's not a Category 4 hurricane. It'll probably be a Category 1 hurricane, but still, that's a lot of water. To say nothing of the rainfall, look at this weather prediction map over the next 5 days. A lot of heavy rain. This map shows a lot of it offshore, we could hope, but if it does move even a little further inland, this would all spread up, and even still, look at those rainfall totals. Several inches of rain spreading up the East Coast, especially if Nicole interacts with a trough later on in its life. That could cause a lot of flash flooding, and the risk is high there. It's going to get even higher. We'll get into the moderate high stage as time goes on, but right now, the entire peninsula pretty much of Florida, with the exception of the Panhandle and the Keys, you guys are under the threat of flash flooding. The key messages with Tropical Storm Nicole from the Hurricane Center. Number 1, hurricane conditions and a dangerous storm surge are expected. Northwest Bahamas on Wednesday. There is a hurricane warning for you guys. Number 2, hurricane conditions expected across portions of the southeast and east central Florida coast beginning late Wednesday or Wednesday night. Hurricane warning is in effect. Tropical storm conditions will begin in those warning areas in Florida and Georgia early tomorrow. So the clock is ticking. Number 3, a dangerous storm surge is expected across much of the east coast of Florida, as well as coastal Georgia, and we have a storm surge warning in effect, and that will be accompanied by large and damaging waves. Residents in that area need to listen to local officials. Number 4, don't expect the exact track to be where it's all at, because Nicole is a large storm, especially north of the center, and that's going to affect much of Florida and the southeast U.S. And finally, Nicole will produce heavy rainfall Wednesday and Thursday across Florida, flash and urban flooding, river rises on the St. Johns River, as I mentioned, and small stream flooding in southeast Georgia and South Carolina into Thursday night. So again, this is a strengthening storm. We're going to watch it very carefully. It's not a hurricane yet, but it's gone from subtropical to tropical as it consolidates around the center. It has some work to do, but it's moving slowly. The waters are warm, and it has an okay environment. It looks like this will be a hurricane for the coastline of Florida. Hurricane warnings are out. I'm Mike Nasel with the latest on Nicole, and I will talk to you guys next time.